Hello, everyone. This is Hope from Hope in the Homeland. I haven't posted a video in a while. Um, that is mostly to do with I have a mostly kind of have a confidence issue where there'll be an issue I want to talk about, and I'll be like, well, I don't know if I know enough about this issue to want to talk about it, and so I just don't. But I'm trying to put my opinion out there more because hey, if everyone else can post their crazy opinions, then by God, so can I. So there's a lot that's been going on. June 14th was our big protest, No King's Day. I know the conservative estimate is about 5 million people out there. And I have to say, I'm so proud of everyone. I was able to take off work for a few hours and I was able to go to a protest. There was probably about 400 people there. And yeah, it was great. Also happening now is Iran and Israel and the US. That's something that's happening. So, lots of big news happening right now, and I'm not going to talk about any of it because that's not actually what inspired me to make this video. What inspired me was actually a conversation I saw. I'm assuming it was a few days ago. I can't access it now. I don't know if it was in the chat for the Parnas perspective, for Aaron Parnas's chat on Substack. And I don't know if those chats saved because I couldn't access it again. But anyway, the gist that I can remember from the conversation is that someone had posted some social media post from someone in the UK. And I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something kind of like bashing like the protest movement or like the opposition or something like that. I'm sure that you've seen comments like that before, that you know the gist of it. And I saw a bunch of people in the comments, were understandably upset. And basically people being like, well, they don't understand what, like, the difference between our countries and stuff like that. And being like, kind of like, well, these Brits always are always bashing us and stuff like that, and they don't understand, and they don't support us and stuff like that. And it probably didn't help. There was this Australian woman in the comments that kept talking about that was just kept insulting Americans. And then there was I remember asking her why she was there, and it was rather weird. But anyway, there was a lot of sentiment basically saying, these British people always do this, they always bash us and stuff like that. And at the risk of being a preachy, I kind of wanted to give people a different perspective on stuff like that, because I was like, well, hey, this is just one person. And I have seen multiple comments like that before, but I've also seen multiple comments of people that do support us in our like protest. And so I was like, well, I know this person that, they post a lot of stuff about like US politics and stuff, like, very much pro our opposition movement. And I was like, well, they're British. And I was like, this person isn't British, but they're Canadian and they also support us a lot. So I guess the point I wanted to make is I wanted to make the thing is we don't, obviously, people get upset when people generalize Americans and say that Americans are all Trump supporters, we all deserve what's happening to us, and all this stuff like that. And I understand why people are upset. I get upset by that too. But I also think that we should avoid painting other countries with the same brush and saying that they aren't supportive of us, or, everyone's out to get us and stuff like that. Because what I've seen, and I've spent a lot of time online since the election, and I've definitely seen a lot of comments from both sides. And I kind of was wondering that maybe people haven't been exposed to some of the positive stuff that I have been exposed to. So I kind of wanted to like bring it to people's attention because I think a lot of times the like negatively definitely definitely surpasses the positivity. And I also wanted to bring up the fact that there are a lot of people that are angry with us around the world. They might be angry with the US, or some people might be angry with the American people. And I just want to say that it sucks, especially if you didn't vote for Trump. But I also don't think that, and it depends on the criticism, because sometimes I think the criticism is absolutely ridiculous. But I don't think that it's necessarily unwarranted that they are mad at us for our decision to elect this man again, because given the fact that it does have an effect on other countries. Like, it's not like it's just us in the US that are feeling the effects of Trump. You know, everyone that's been tariffed, everyone that's, had their, you know, yeah, like Ukraine is, people in Ukraine might be upset um, because, Trump is siding with Putin. So I don't think it's necessarily that people hate us or that it's unwarranted that some people would be mad. I do think some people take it way too far. And again, I didn't vote for Trump. I did everything I could to make sure Trump didn't get back in office. So I do get upset when people are like, oh, well, the Americans did this. But I also kind of understand that, unfortunately, when you're part of a country, you do kind of, not all of it is your fault, but in my perspective, it kind of, all of it's our responsibility a bit. Like, it's the same way with Germany, where basically being like, blaming modern day Germans for what happened in the 1940s is ridiculous because they obviously didn't do it. But I do think that as a country, we do share responsibility for for the actions, like not blame but responsibility to fix stuff, because in that same vein, a lot of times, we talk about, well, we did this in World War II. Most people, pretty much no one alive today was a soldier in World War II, but we still say we did this in World War II because, we kind of view stuff as like collective. So I don't think it's wrong to necessarily like, you have to say we are threatening Canada's sovereignty, because it's not really we, it's Trump. But I also think that we do bear some responsibility with that. Not blame, especially if you didn't vote for Trump. If you did vote for Trump, you do. I would say I think you definitely have at least more blame than people who didn't. But uh, what I was saying is that I think that it is our job to fix it, and we do have a little bit of responsibility there. So I just want to say that people being mad at us or stuff like that, I think that is warranted because let's face it, as a country, we messed up, and all the other countries are having to deal with our bullshit. And I think that if we want to be able to move ahead, we do kind of have to give people a little bit of room to vent a bit. I'm not saying that you need to stay in there and be a whipping boy for it, but I also think that if people are venting their frustration about what our country is doing, or the fact that Americans voted for this, I don't think that's necessarily something where we have necessarily the right to jump down their throats and be like, well, why are you supporting us with that? That doesn't mean they're not supporting us with that. They're just, venting their frustration. And you know, I also, the way that I look at stuff is also like, if people are angry or like are hurt by like what happens, you can't really and if someone's like, well, I'll never forgive you, you can't really do anything about that. Like, all you can do is you could be like, I'm sorry, and you could try to make things better. But if they're not going to forgive you for that, then all you can really do is move on. And it really sucks. I know that, but like, that's another thing where like, when I see comments of people being like, well, I'll never forgive Americans or I'll never forgive the United States, that makes me sad. But I also am like, okay, because like, you know, if they come out and say there's nothing that we can do, then there's not really a point in dwelling on it. I'm kind of just like, okay, you know, we're gonna try to be a better country going forward, and you know, sorry. Uh, but I got a little bit off topic, but I just want to say that I just wanted to clarify, the thing is, there is a difference between people being, you know, not supportive and basically like being, you know, being like, you know, you deserve everything that's happening to you and stuff like that, which people are mad about, rightfully so, because that's really hurtful. And there's also a difference between, you know, people being, you know, rightfully very pissed off at what our country is doing, and basically being like, you know, the like, and basically, you know, criticizing our country. And I think that's very fair. Or even criticizing Americans for letting this happen again, because it's kind of hard not to when Trump won the popular vote and the majority of Americans didn't vote. We need to, the thing is, as a country, we need to reckon with that. So that's all I'm saying. There, first off, I want to say, not everyone that's criticizing us, or even that's kind of like, that's even kind of maybe insulting us a bit, it doesn't necessarily mean that they hate us or stuff. It might also just be that emotions are running pretty high. And I would try not to take that too personally. That's what I've learned, is I try to just be like, there's nothing that being like, some, you know, people may be angry right now. And even if this like stays forever, you know, not everyone will feel this way, and I just kind of need to move on. So that's my point with that. That was just the thing. That point went on a little longer than I wanted it to. But the second thing that I wanted to say, uh, and what brought this all along, is I think that, again, people see those comments, or even see, I've seen some truly, really hurtful and I'd say unwarranted comments, especially on I've been on Reddit a lot, and there are certain subreddits that I just avoid because of the fact of how much vitriol there is, that I don't know, if I don't feel it's entirely warranted, but I just leave it alone. So, and I think that people can see that and they can think that, oh, the entire world hates us, and you know, like nobody is seeing, you know, they don't understand that we're fighting back, and you know, they don't care, they all want us to fail, they all like, you know, they all basically they all think we're MAGA crazy people. And I wanted to sorry, I wanted to share with you guys, like, for some people that do think that, that no, it's not everyone in the world that thinks that. And like, I know at least, like, off the top of my head, I can name a few, like, you know, like prominent like places and stuff where you can find people that are not Americans supporting Americans in our fight against the like, you know, this tyranny. Uh, one, I guess on a Reddit, I would say that during the kind of the first months of Trump being inaugurated, I joined a subreddit called Can US Help? And it was actually created by someone that someone ended up stepping away, actually, but it's still there. Where the whole point of the subreddit was to keep the kind of the line of communication opened between Canadians and Americans. And it came from the recognition that not all Americans support Trump, or a lot of them are upset about what Trump has been doing and saying to Canada, and that you know it and that it was important to keep that, like, those connections together, so that the groups could work together to push back on all that. So I really enjoyed. I kind of like lurked there a lot, and I've like really enjoyed seeing all of all there's like I think the Moz are half Canadian, half American, and the whole point of it is kind of it's viewed as you know kind of a joint battle against what's happening in the U.S. and to a lesser extent what's happening in Canada with the Maple MAGA stuff, but it's mostly focused on like what's happening in the U.S. But yeah, if you ever if you've ever like entirely convinced that everyone in Canada hates us or stuff, I would definitely advise checking that place out, because it definitely made me feel like it first of all it made me like it definitely it nails home the message of specifically why people in Canada are so upset. And I know that you're probably thinking like, well, obviously I know why. It's because of the tariffs and the threats to sovereignty and stuff like that. And I think that, that obviously, I think a lot of Americans can understand that on like, a very like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think also it's helpful to see stuff from a different perspective as well, because I think one of the things that some of us Americans might forget sometimes is, so we're like viewing it as basically being like, of course we're not going to invade Canada or something like that. That's stupid. But, but people in Canada are looking at this as coming from, a country that is multiple times bigger than them and has a lot more weaponry than them. And like, so I think that when you look at it from a different perspective, you're like, oh yeah, I understood why people were upset before, but yeah, I can definitely see like now it kind of really nails home. And I think that that's really helpful to see. Another Canadian that I really like is there's this Canadian on Substack called Canada Resists, and I think I saw they study U.S. Canada relations, and I will say they have like some of the sweetest posts and stuff like that. They made a lot of posts, basically talking about talking like inviting Americans to Canada to kind of like to kind of get away from to kind of like take a break from all the Trump stuff. And they ended up posting another post being like, I don't want this to come off as like, I'm like bragging about my country, being better than yours or stuff like that. I'm just really trying. I want to, give you guys a little bit of a respite and stuff. And, everyone in the comments was like, no, it makes sense. And also, it's like, you're allowed to be proud of your country. I'm proud of my country, even with everything going on. So yeah, definitely, you can definitely be proud of your country. But yeah, I think their posts are really sweet, and that definitely it gives. I don't know if anyone else can tell, but international relations before this whole thing happened was something that I was really passionate about. I don't really focus on it anymore because every time I see it, I just want to cry when I see what Trump is doing to our allies and our relationships. So I don't really focus on it anymore, unfortunately. But being able to see, I guess get validation from random foreigners on the internet does tend to help me. So yeah, that's definitely Canada Resists on Substack. I'd recommend that. r/CanUSHelp on Reddit, the subreddit. I definitely recommend that. Another one is when I was talking about the whole British thing, I was like, well, one of these other guys that I follow is Truth Matters. They're British, and their whole their whole Substack is about American politics and about the resistance to Trump and stuff like that. And I remember seeing that they posted a message in one of their chats a little bit ago where they were like, "Hey guys, from like across the pond, hey, saying hi from across the pond, like how are you?" And then a bunch of Americans in the comments were like, "Oh, well, this is happening," and stuff like that. And I think that people that aren't in the US, like I don't know if they always know like how how meaningful that is to at least to me, that like is really, because it, like, it's one thing to hear that from your fellow Americans, we're all in this together, it is important, but it's another to kind of hear it from people outside the country, and it, like, it shows that we're getting across and stuff like that. And now, finally, and this is one that I definitely recommend. um so there's this Substack on on Substack, this journal on Substack by I'm trying to get, by this guy from Ukraine, and I'm gonna attempt to pronounce his name. I think I'm gonna butcher it. It's a Victor Kravchuk, or Kravchuk. Let's just say Victor K. And he has a journal that talks about his life in Ukraine. It's called War, Love, and Survival in Ukraine. And he's very eloquent with his like writing. I'm very like I he's very much a wordsmith and has definitely a way with words. I really enjoy reading his work. But along with his like mentions about what's happening in Ukraine and stuff, he also started to write articles kind of like tying what was happening in Ukraine to what was happening in the US. And and he and he actually made another journal that was called Freedom Line. He made it recently, and that one is specifically about like the connection between what's happening in the U.S. and what's happening in Ukraine. And I know for me, that is honestly, I guess, kind of very flattering for me as an American, that like this guy in Ukraine sees like a connection between our fight and theirs, mostly because of the fact that in Ukraine they're fighting a external threat. They are having autocracy and like brutality imposed on them from another country. That's not something they brought on themselves. Whereas in the US, I think we get a little bit of less sympathy than maybe Ukraine would get, because of the fact that we did elect Trump into office. So it is a little bit of it's not as clear cut of, obviously I'm not saying that, oh, we deserve what's happening because of that, but there is definitely a difference in being attacked by someone else, by like someone else's actions that you have no control over, and being attacked by your own government that your fellow citizens elected. So definitely, and also the fact that we're just kind of going out and doing protests, and I'm not saying that to downplay anything that anyone's done, because there's definitely been a lot of courageous people in this movement. I'm very impressed with like everything people have done, but I am acknowledging the fact that it is a little different than being in a literal war zone, even if it may feel like it is here sometimes. But yeah, there's like times where like I read his posts, kind of like saying his perspective from someone that lives in Ukraine, and it definitely means a lot. also especially the fact that, you know, he'll address the fact where like, you know, when Rubio made that post on Russia Day being like, from the American people to the Russian people, you know, we like honor Russia's achievements and stuff like that, without, and like basically be like, we want a productive like relationship with Russia, and like, you know, and I guess a little bit of a tangent, but like for me, my issue was not the fact that, you know, he said something nice about the Russian people, because like I don't hold anything specific against the Russian people. I want to make that clear. If it's mostly just the fact that he said that without acknowledging what, that like Russia had just attacked a bunch of civilians in Ukraine, and that sounded very tone deaf to me. I was like, okay, but you can't really talk about we want better relations with Russia, we want to work together with Russia, when Russia's doing the war right now. You kind of need to get them to stop doing the war before you can say that. So that was my big gripe, but you know, it's definitely very embarrassing and humiliating as an American to see them say that. And Victor made a post basically saying like, it's very disheartening to see this come from like the US government, but I know that, you know, this doesn't represent the majority of Americans and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, thank God that at least some of the people in Ukraine recognize the fact that we do not, like, you recognize the fact that we do not agree with that statement and stuff like that. So I've definitely been going on for a very long time. This is what happens. See, none of these videos are scripted, which is why I can kind of nervous. But I guess the point I was making was that we do have friends out there. We do have, like, even with everything Trump has done to alienate us from our allies and all this stuff like that, there are still people that believe in us and that want us to win and that are behind us. And what I've said before, what I've said like in this video, I'm more just talking about, you know, creators from other countries that are specifically covering this stuff, or again, the subreddit I was talking about. But I do have, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I do have, I have to say, over 100 screenshots on my iPad that I have, every time I've kind of come across a comment on like a YouTube video or subreddit or on Substack or stuff like that, of basically someone being like, I'm from another country, and basically offering words of encouragement and stuff. I've screenshotted that. I have all of those on my like devices, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do with them, because like, you know, they're important to me. That's why I like screenshotted them. But I also wonder if it would help other people to see them. But I also kind of feel weird being like, here are these random comments I've gotten from all these YouTube videos. Because again, I can't verify whether these, like, you know, these people be like, I'm from the UK. I can't verify if they're actually from the UK because it's a random comment on a YouTube video. And I have also but I guess the point is that, you know, I have like I've definitely come across some posts that were in support of us, and like a few videos and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm saying is that if anyone is interested in seeing any of those messages that I've taken a screenshot of, I can share them. I guess. And I guess wrapping this video up, because it's like a half hour long. My point is the fact that, as I said before, we are not alone. We have friends all over the world, as I said. And despite Trump's best efforts, He has not been able to alienate everyone from us. And I think that we can't, there will be a lot of comments from people that are mad at us that will, will make us kind of angry and may make us kind of resentful of people in other countries. And the point of this video is that I wanted to remind people that just like how we don't want to be judged by the people that are out there insulting other countries like Trump, like just like how we don't want Canada to judge us by like what Trump is saying about Canada or what MAGA is saying about Canada, I don't think that we should, write off the entire citizens of other countries as, being like unfair or hating us just because of some comments that we come across from people in those other countries. Because I do think that what it will do is it will just build more division, and I think ultimately that is kind of what Trump wants. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. We have friends all over the world, and it's important that we remember that. So, thank you guys for listening. I'm sorry this video is so long. Have a great day, and hopefully I'll be able to post more. And also, thank you for 10 subscribers on Substack. I believe that now, because I tried to do a live video before and it said like, oh, you need at least like 10 subscribers and stuff. So I think now I will be able to make a live video, which is very exciting now. I now have that option. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day, everyone, and stay hopeful.